Eu queria pedir a Stephanie Faulkner para fazer a sua apresentação.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Abel for having me here and congratulate you on your anniversary. I hope I can become a regular like Felix and come to all the others every year. So today I'm here to talk about how we move beyond citation indexes in measuring societal impact. And we look at it at clinical, policy, and patent. So Felix set the stage talking about patents for me. I don't know if you know who Plum Analytics is, so this is a little slide. We're part of Elsevier, we were part of EBSCO. We're not very old, but we're founded to tell the story of research, and we want to tell research using different categories alongside traditional citation counts: usage, social media, captures, and mentions. We have a variety of different customers. We work with funders, we work with publishers, we work with research institutions, we work with government agencies and non-government agencies. So we have a good mix of information and customers. So why do metrics even matter, right? What are metrics for? Well, they drive decisions. If you think about it, when you travel to a different city, like I came here, I wanted to know where to go have dinner. So I looked up TripAdvisor to see what the reviews were and what restaurants they recommend, right? That's a metric. Businesses like Starbucks use metrics like foot traffic, automobile traffic, the price of real estate. They use all of these metrics to determine where they will put their next store. And Uber uses metrics to determine their surge pricing, right? So when it costs you a little more at 5 p.m. versus at 3 p.m. to take a taxi. Those are all metrics that we use in our real life. So metrics matter, and they're around us all the time. We don't even think about it. So comprehensive metrics can really give you an edge as a publisher, as an institution, as a researcher. Research metrics can be used to identify, what someone's strengths are, whether you're an institution or a country, what research areas are getting funded. If I'm a funder, am I getting a return on investment for what I'm funding? And who are early or rising stars in the research world, right? So you use metrics to tell the story of research. So societal impact, why does it matter, or why do those metrics matter? If you look around the world, more and more regional assessment exercises, like the REF in the UK, the ERA in Australia, and the RAE in Hong Kong, these are organized assessment activities that they're specifically looking for ways to access the reach and significance of the impact on the economy, society, and culture. And so you need to have societal impact metrics to be able to demonstrate that for these assessments, right? So funders are also asking for metrics that demonstrate real-world proof of how a piece of research has made an impact. Researchers in an institution want to know what kind of impact their work has made. And publishers want to know the impact of the work they're publishing. So if you look at the REF, which was last done in the UK in 2014, they received 7,000 impact case studies. And those case studies were organized into these groups that they categorized them, a variety of categories. Of the 7,000 cases, 25% were societal. And I would even go farther to say that some of the things like they tag things as economic or technological, that's societal too. You could say all of those categories are really societal. And as they prepare for their next assessment in the UK, which is 2021, they've stated that they're looking specifically to assess the reach and significance of impacts on economy, society, culture, public policy or services, health, and the environment or the quality of life. That's societal impact, right? So measuring this type of impact is a real challenge. Patent applications, at least in the US, can take 18 months or longer before they're approved, and you can even see the resources, right? Many governments don't have documents, whether it's patent or policy, and those references that are associated with it, they're not in a format that can be harvested. So manual curation is what has to happen, or text mining. There's a lot of manpower that goes behind trying to get these metrics. And David Crotty, who's with the Oxford University Press, he writes for the Scholarly Kitchen. I don't know if you ever read that blog. He did a really interesting post about measuring societal impact, and he made a point that, you know, how do you measure the impact of an astrophysicist versus an economist? It's very different, right? It's like sort of apples to oranges. You can't always use the same measures to measure someone's impact. So the way we measure Plumx metrics measure societal impact is we look at things in 3 ways right now. We've categorized them into 3 groups, which maybe you'll see. There we go. So we call them citations, but we treat them separate from citation indexes, right? They're not a citation count in that regard. We categorize them as clinical citations, policy citations, and patent citations. So let's talk first about policy citations. We know that finding references to research in policy documents is really important because there's new demands on researchers and those who support them to demonstrate public engagement with their research. They have to demonstrate its impact on government policy and even cultural life and societal impact. All those things that ref assessment is asking for, right? Policy documents themselves can be designed to push policy or legislation, you know, to have government officials do something. They can be statements of public policy by a government. They can be a statement from an organization that's highly respected, right? But the term policy documents is a really vague way of describing documents that come from different sources, whether it's a not-for-profit organization, a think tank, a governmental organization, right? And they're all different kinds of documents that could be considered policy documents. It could be a pamphlet or a book or a chapter or a report. And it may have something like the word guideline in the title, or guidance, or recommendations. So it's really kind of hard to collect all of this information and determine what's legitimate policy versus just someone, you know, writing a document about something. So one example I want to show you is that the World Health Organization, right, their primary role is to direct and coordinate, you know, international health within the United Nations systems. They work to combat diseases like the flu and HIV and cancer and heart disease. And they try to help mothers and children survive and thrive so they can become old, you know, go to an old age. And they worry about the air that we breathe and the food that we eat and the water that we drink and the medicines and the vaccines, right? So that's their goal. So in 2013, the World Health Report came out about research for universal health coverage, right? That was what the focus of their report was. They put one out every year. And they argued that universal health coverage, right? So having that right to full access, high quality services for the prevention and treatment of disease and illness is something that cannot be achieved without the evidence provided by scientific research. So this article that I'm showing up here with the little plum information on it, this was an article from the SciELO platform, and this was cited in that World Health Report in 2013. So that's pretty impressive, I think, that this was mentioned, right? And we show where we get that policy citation from, and we link back to that. I know it's hard to see too, so you'll have to look at this slide. Another example, this is not from the SciELO platform, this is a researcher that was in Australia. He wrote a piece of work, and that piece of work got 5 different policy citations. And if we look at these citations in detail, you can see that, you know, if you look at the title and the source, you see that this one article had an impact on food and nutrition, that was the topic, and it impacted it in an economic way and in a policy way because both the World Health Organization and the World Bank cited them in documents. Those are 2 very different policy-making organizations or policy-influencing organizations. I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about clinical research, right? So we know that clinical research does not get cited as much as basic research. That's something that's been recognized for since 1997, 98, you know. So why is that a problem, that this doesn't get recognized? Researchers have difficulty getting funding. So early career researchers who can't get funded for this opt out of translational medicine. It hurts us all when researchers aren't, you know, when they're turning their backs on science and they don't want to develop ways to treat illness and disease, you know, or when doctors, you know, pioneer new treatments, but they don't have time or they don't want to publish to get recognition for that, right? We need that kind of stuff. We need to measure clinical impact. We want to help researchers and institutions and publishers understand what's impactful in that clinical realm. So the way we measure clinical impact right now is we look at things from clinical alerting services, clinical guidelines, clinical trials, and systematic reviews. And you know, we get them from a variety of sources. There are PubMed guidelines that are publicly available. There's an organization out of the UK called NICE. It's the National Institute for Healthcare. There's a product by EBSCO called Dynamed Plus Topics. There are all different kinds of sources that we're mining for clinical policy information. So real quick, as I mentioned, right, there's practice guidelines, and those are a good source. They're publicly available. Anytime a piece of research is cited by a guideline, we consider that a clinical citation. You can see the PubMed guidelines are fully available. They're really like considered an article type if you look for guideline if you ever go to PubMed. So here's another example of an article that has 4 clinical citations, right? 3 are from PubMed and 1 is from NICE in the UK. And we link you back to the guidelines so you can see where that research is referenced. I'm going to spend a couple seconds talking about Dynamed Plus because it's a really interesting product. And I'm not selling anything. It's not even my company, right? But it's a source that we use. And it's great because this is something that's used at point of care. This is used by doctors in hospitals or doctors in their offices who are on their iPads trying to diagnose disease. You know, you're sick and they don't know what you have, so they often go to these kinds of services. Elsevier has a product called Clinical Key, too, that we're working with, right? So this content's developed with a really strict evidence-based editorial process written by doctors and a team of, you know, researchers, and they update this content all the time, like several times throughout the day. So it's really, really current. So when the Zika virus, and we've talked about the Zika virus a couple times during this conference, but when it hit North America late in 2015, doctors were really unprepared how to handle it. I think the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, which is part of the US National Institute of Health, said there were 62 cases in 2015. By 2016, there were 5,168 diagnoses. So it went from 62 to over 5,100. It's a huge increase in a short period of time. So these doctors in hospitals and private practices needed to turn to sources like PubMed guidelines or Dynamed or Clinical Key to figure out and diagnose these because the cases were coming in so quickly. So it's really nice that we can show the impact that this article, right, it influenced this topic on the Zika virus that Dynamed Plus issued, right? So there were physicians literally looking at this while they're trying to diagnose people. So I'm going to shift gears once again before I run out of time to talk a little bit about patent citations. So Felix talked about the importance of patents, and I'm hearing it more and more as I talk to other people. You know, patents can illustrate sort of a connection between the academic world and the corporate world. And, you know, it can also indicate, you know, how researchers work with other countries. There's a lot of connections that can be made by looking at patents. There's a group of researchers, it's called the Human Engineering Research Laboratories at the University of Pittsburgh. And I wanted to highlight them. Their mission is to continuously improve the mobility and function of people with disabilities through advanced engineering in clinical research and medical rehabilitation. So they really want to create a world where people with disabilities can contribute to society freely and aren't encumbered by their disability. They're funded, through grants. They publish books, they write articles, but the vast majority of what they do is they develop things. They create wheelchairs that run on air and not on a battery. They create a splint for an arm to help someone who has, nerve damage be able to use their arm in a functional way. So they make stuff. That's what they do. Like I said, they do write, they do other things, but that's what they're really excited about. So how do you measure that? How do you measure the impact of a wheelchair? The way we do it for them is through patent citations. So in 2012, they received a patent for a joystick, right? That's a thing that can drive a wheelchair. It helps people who don't have the ability to move their upper body drive their own wheelchair. That's got to be pretty cool if you can't do that yourself. If you can't get around and you all of a sudden have a way to do that, that's very exciting. So they patented it. So we tracked what that patent did. That patent for the joystick with the customizations they made was patented. You can see that 10 other patents referred back to that patent and that piece of work. So that extends the impact of what they've done. So all of that research, you can see if you click through, it takes you right to that. This is a US patent. All of that research is contributing to the quality of life for these people who are wheelchair bound. That's a great measure of impact for these researchers. That's something they can show to their funders, what they've done, when there's not an article to demonstrate that. So I think it's really exciting to see the real life impact, that research can take, whether it's impacting a law or, a medical care or the invention of new technologies. And clinical research is an area we know is underserved by traditional citation metrics. So it's important to the day-to-day welfare of all of us in the world. And we really want to be able to measure the impact of clinical research as well. So we're going to continue to kind of innovate and pioneer and find new sources and new ways of measuring this societal impact, because we really think it has a huge effect on everyone, whether you're a researcher, a publisher, or a kid who goes to school. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.